What is going on, Chicago Bears fans? It is getting real interesting in the Windy City right now with the upgrades on the Chicago Bears team, with the upgrades across the board, whether it be coaching, whether it be players, no matter what. There's a significant upgrade to this team and a heightened sense of expectations. However, the question is, can that maintain? And somebody just brought up a pretty important point. We're going to talk about that one today as part of this. That what would happen if, and this would be a disaster for the Chicago Bears season if Montez Sweat were to go down with an injury. Montez Sweat been very healthy for most of his career so far. Last year led both the Washington Commanders and Chicago Bears in sacks. First time that's ever happened. 12 and a half sacks total on the season. Number one, all of those sacks are now coming to Chicago. Number two, he's going to have a second year in this system now. He's going to be feeling a lot more comfortable with a lot more seasoning, a lot more practice, a lot more knowledge about the scheme. That in itself makes it incredibly bullish for the Chicago Bears for the 2024 season. But what if he gets injured? What do we do then? Austin Booker, um, Dominique Robinson. What happens to the Chicago Bears if Montez Sweat is physically unable to perform? So we're going to dig into that. Plus, we're going to talk about the status of the contract. You know what contract it is. I don't have to tell you what contract it is. But there's also some new footage that shows exactly who the Bears were going to select. And remember, they broke into three different pieces and or three different groups, whatever you call it. One was for wide receivers, one was for defense, one was for offensive line, and they then decided on who the player was. And of course, they got their guy. In fact, on the list, you can see that they got their guy because they had pegged Roma Dunze as the talent of the draft for their impression. So fantastic stuff. But let's get into it. And let's start with what would happen if Montez Sweat ended up getting injured? How bad does this team become? Well, statistically speaking, last season, in total, between two teams, of course, Montez Sweat had 38 tackles, 20 assisted tackles, and 12 and a half sacks. So what sort of production? And by the way, 4 passes defended, which was not his record. That was in 2020. And that would end up being this is a game changer. This guy is a game changer. And going down the list in 2019, 16 games, in 2020, 16 games, in 2021, 10 games, but in 2022 and 2023, 17 games. So, this guy is healthy, ready. You know what I mean? So we'll see how this plays out. But let's just consider here the Chicago Bears are a good team on paper. However, they have some stuff to work out and to improve on the field. They have a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams and an offense that is going to take some time to get their chemistry together on a full-time basis. They need their defenses to play well all season to have a chance of contending. The timeline of 2024 and the second half of the season lines up to when the Chicago Bears traded for Montez Sweat. That's when the team started to see some improvement. He's a great player that they needed on the defensive line to shore up the pass rush so that the rest of the unit could fall into place. Some people were skeptical about the trade when Poles first made it, but he showed exactly why it was a smart move right away. Sweat missed 7 games in 2021 due to injury, but he played all 17 games in back-to-back seasons from 22 to 23. He also was back to full health and feeling good, which showed on the field, which is why the Bears must keep Sweat healthy in 2024. If he goes down, the Chicago Bears are going to be in big trouble. Their pass rushing depth isn't great behind Sweat, where DeMarcus Walker and rookie Austin Booker are the key names on their roster. Losing him would be a brutal blow for their postseason aspirations. Injuries happen in football, but the Bears cannot afford to lose Montez Sweat. Their depth at edge rusher will increase over the years, but they didn't do enough this offseason to add it there right now. Keeping Sweat on the field is going to end up being a top priority. If he does not, and he's not able to perform, remember, this was the number 1 rushing defense last season. None of that changes, by the way. And that's going to be to the good if there's anything good. just in case Montez Sweat were to get injured. This was already going to be the number one rushing defense. This is a strong rushing defense team, and Montez Sweat is an edge rusher. So it's not going to be much of a problem, if you will. That's not his forte. That's not his role. However, it's the passing defense that becomes a question. Now, if you did that, is Austin Booker good for 12 and a half sacks? Is DeMarcus Walker going to be better on the other side by virtue of he will end up being the person that commands double team if you're on the edge because Austin Booker is new and it would take a few games for people to get into the realm of, whether or not we're going to be double teaming up or chip blocking on Austin Booker or on DeMarcus Walker. It's a very difficult proposition. Early on, you're going to go with DeMarcus Walker, of course, but Austin Booker, if he comes along, maybe you have something there. But Montez Sweat is probably the linchpin for this team getting, if not getting into the playoffs, he's going to be the linchpin on this team being good, a pass rushing team, because other than that, there is not that much there. Now, that's no disrespect to Andrew Billing. That's no disrespect to Gervon Dexter or DeMarcus Walker, any of these guys. Again, it's the number one rush defense. It's the passing game and getting pressure on the quarterback where the Chicago Bears have struggled and continued to struggle for a long period of time. So it would be a disaster for Montez Sweat to be injured. Now, the question, of course, becomes one of the other pieces to this was the number 25 ranked pass defense. And I want to say, against a really good quarterback, it is sometimes very difficult to hold your man for an extended period of time without creating passing lanes. It is incredibly difficult in the NFL. These are elite level athletes playing against other elite level athletes, so it's complicated. It's difficult. However, with no amount of pressure and giving a quarterback plenty of time in the backfield, then you get horrible results, right? Well, if Montez Sweat is injured, then that probably means horrible rush, a bad pass rush and plenty of time. And that means that the pass defense will end up suffering dramatically because of it. So hoping for some good health. And by the way, again, remember this, 12 and a half sacks. What does that look like on a full season for the Chicago Bears? Knowing that he's getting better as he goes, knowing that he's starting to improve, knowing that he's starting to put it together. Does that mean 15 sacks? Does that mean 16 sacks? Is this one of those record-setting sort of runs? I mean, we're about to find out because we're not that far. I think we're 80 days away from opening day right now. So we're not that far out before we're going to find out what the product on the field really, really looks like. And I am certainly hoping that there is no disaster in Chicago for Montez Sweat, because that is going to be bad. Montez Sweat is the guy in Chicago right now, the big star, if you will, on the team, not named Caleb Williams, of course. But, guys, this is, if we bring the monsters of the midway back, it's going to be on this guy's shoulders. Now, moving on, there is a list that popped out, and I just had time to get the list, but there's new footage that shows all the players that Chicago was considering for the number 9 selection. Now, the Bears never released the names of any of the people. But what they did tell everybody was that they split their scouting department into 3 groups. Each group would be in a specific position with a list of key players. It was going to be wide receivers, it was going to be linemen, and it was going to be defensive ends. Those were the biggest periods. Those are the biggest areas of need. And the list was this. And this is the list by weight, by the way. Rome Odunze, Marvin Harrison, Malik Nabers, Brian Thomas. They had Rome Odunze as the number 1 guy. They got their number 1 guy. They had him rated in their analysis as better than Marvin Harrison Jr. and better than Malik Nabers. Now, is that true? I don't know. History is going to be the guide for that. We're not going to know until we see the product on the field. The other piece was when they had made selections, Joe Alt was number 1, Olufashanu was number 2, J.C. Latham number 3, and Talise Fuaga was number 4 on their offensive lineman. And then on their defensive line, this one's interesting to me because fundamentally, I I disagree with some of this, but Latu, Byron Murphy, Dallas Turner, Jared Verse. Now, um, I don't know how you rate Latu above Dallas Turner because you're the only people doing that. And Byron Murphy, game changer at the defensive tackle position, allegedly. Again, it still takes the NFL to figure out whether or not you are, but it's a very interesting sort of. I mean, by the way, if you were to say Roma Dunze was number one over Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't have much of an argument for that, other than maybe Marvin Harrison's pedigree, having a Hall of Fame father, having what appears to be the same work ethic, and to be 4 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier, and faster. Everything kind of you know what you got in Marvin Harrison Jr., or you feel like you know what you got in Marvin Harrison Jr. Roma Dunze, when you go watch the tape, you really get enamored with his skill. Malik Neighbors, you really get enamored with his skill. So, any one of these guys being number one on this list, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Like, it makes perfect sense to me. Roma Dunze, if you got him as your number one guy, I don't have a problem with that. I think Marvin Harrison is the generational talent of this draft. I still, to this moment, think that is the case. However, that doesn't mean that Rome is not. You know what I mean? We got our guy. But then you have Joe Alt, which made perfect sense. That looked like one that made perfect sense. And you had Olu Fashanu, J.C. Latham, and Talise Fuaga. And actually, that's exactly the list. It's just the defensive list that they had here was just a very, very odd sort of list. Mine would have been number one. Mine would have been number two. Mine would have been number three. Mine would have been number four. So I would have been looking at Dallas Turner as my number one guy, Jared Verse as my number two, Byron Murphy as number three, and then Latu as number four. But again, we're splitting hairs here at this point because you never really know what it looks like. So, but that's just an interesting sort of list. And shout out. Now, the other thing is there was an article that came up today on Sports Mockery talking about former Bears scout Greg Gabriel. Greg Gabriel was here. He was in on all of this shit way back when. Now, he thinks that the Chicago Bears have found their next Lance Briggs, and that guy's name is T.J. Edwards. He's on the team. He's on his second year. So we're going to see if he's going to be the will that we always wanted, since Lance Briggs is no longer here. When discussing the greatest era of Chicago Bears defense, there's three that come to mind: the elite units of the early 60s, then the 80s group, and then there was the 2005 to 2012 Bears that had Brian Urlacher, Peanut Tillman, and Lance Briggs. Nick Roach was in that mix as well. But Lance Briggs was the unquestioned third ace of the defenses. The guy was a heat-seeking missile to the football, constantly making tackles and never seeming to be out of position. Every time the Bears needed a big play, he was part of it. If those teams had won a Super Bowl, Briggs would be an unquestioned Hall of Famer. Sadly, he remains somewhat forgotten outside of Chicago. Former scout Greg Gabriel was part of that entire run, so it was interesting to hear him say the team has found the next version of Briggs in linebacker T.J. Edwards. The Bears' will linebacker is T.J. Edwards, who, like Edmonds, was signed as an unrestricted free agent a year ago. Edwards' physical traits are very similar to Lance Briggs in terms of size and speed, and like Briggs, he has great instincts. In the Bears' scheme, it is imperative the will be a playmaker, and that is exactly what Edwards is. Last year, he led the Bears in total tackles with 155 and recorded 3 interceptions. Again, his numbers are very similar to what Briggs put up. And let's just say, at the beginning of the season, when nobody seemed to be ready, when players were messing up and making bad plays, I remember watching early on, seeing Tremaine Edmonds, who, by the way, accounted for himself very well through the end of the season, but at the beginning of the season did not really look in his best playing shape and did not really look ready, or at least coached the right way. TJ Edwards, on the other hand, always seemed to be playing hard, always seemed to be in the moment, always seemed to be present and knowing what was going on. And I think that spoke volumes to how this team ended up being the number one rushing defense. That was one of the guys causing that. So, and again, nothing against Tremaine Edmonds. I think Tremaine Edmonds is a great Mike. I think that he's, I mean, he's certainly no Brian Urlacher. I think we should at least recognize that. He's certainly no Brian Urlacher, but he's still a fantastic talent. And we're lucky to have him. But TJ Edwards has been just really good last year. The guy was literally everywhere. Opponents couldn't escape him if they tried. He finished with 155 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, and 7 passes defended. You'd like to see him get a little bit more in the blitz scheme too. It is a crime he wasn't selected to the Pro Bowl. How the Bears got him for $6.5 million per year remains a mystery. An even bigger one is how the Philadelphia Eagles chose to let him go in the first place. It was so obvious he was the heart and soul of the defense in 2022. It isn't a coincidence they went from 2 to 26th last season, and we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. The unit never seemed cohesive. His absent leadership was a big part of that. Conversely, the Bears benefited from his presence countless times. They were among the league's best against the run and became by far the most opportunistic. Lance Briggs would have been proud. It was the exact style of defense Chicago played during his peak years. If that is what the organization can expect over the next few years, this team could return to contention. After all, unlike Briggs's defenses in the 2000s, this one appears to be a far better situation under quarterback. So if that's true, then guys, we are on the verge right here. I keep telling you in every way I can possibly tell you. Like, I have faith in this process, the way that it's played out, and the way this team has been developed and created. And I think that, Ryan Poles done a fantastic job in finding people like TJ Edwards. That doesn't go poorly. That's going to be, I think, Montez Sweat. I think, the draft picks, Gervon Dexter, Tyreek Stevenson, Kyler Gordon, all of these guys, Jalen Johnson, like this, Jaquan Brisker, they've created an incredible team that just needs a little time to develop into the elite level that we can be. The depth is still an issue. The depth at cornerback, not an issue. Depth at safety, not really an issue. Depth at linebacker, I think that's still a tiny bit of an issue, and the depth on the defensive line cannot be understated. It cannot be overstated. Like it is. I think we are in desperate straits on that line, despite the fact that, again, I have every confidence that if we can maintain and be healthy, Montez Sweat, DeMarcus Walker are going to have great seasons. Gervon Dexter looking the part right now. Whether he can maintain himself as a 3 technique or not, we'll see. I mean, we're going to have to see the product on the field, but in practice, he looks phenomenal so far. And Andrew Billings, he is just he is just a run-stopping machine, and he takes up an enormous amount of space on that line. So, we're going to see how this plays out, but I think that so far, so good. I think it looks really positive for the future. And in closing, let's get into Caleb Williams. There's an update right now. 12 first-round picks currently remain unsigned, including both Rome Odunze and Caleb Williams. It's common for first-round picks, especially the first and ninth, to take longer to finalize their contracts. The delays involve minor details like language and wording. Williams is expected to sign his deal. Rookie contracts are slotted by draft picks, and Williams' 4-year deal is expected to be worth exactly $39,486,057 with a 25.537132 signing bonus. The deal, which should include a club option for a 5th year, is expected to have a salary cap number of $7.179 million per season. When asked for an update on his rookie contract, Williams deflected, stating that his team is handling it and that he is fully focused on football. There is optimism that a deal will be reached between the Bears and Williams before training camp. Brad Biggs of the Chicago Tribune offered a positive update and says, at this juncture, there's no reason for concern that the Bears won't sign Williams before training camp opens, which will be a week earlier than usual because the team is playing in the Hall of Fame game against the Houston Texans on August 1st in Canton. Regarding Rome Odunze's contract, there hasn't actually been an update available, but just like Williams, nobody is concerned. So looks like everybody's feeling really good about and look, I mean, these guys are in OTAs. These guys were in mandatory minis, and they were out there to play. They were out there to work hard, and they were out there getting it done and learning and getting better at their craft so that they are ready for this season. Rome, by the way, injured a little bit, so we didn't see the full Rome Odunze, but we did see Caleb Williams on display. Struggled mightily. And by the way, if you don't think that defense wasn't dancing around, letting him know that it is not going to be easy and that they're going to make him a great quarterback, well, you know it now. So great opportunity to learn and build. And if the Bears defense is what we think it's going to be, then this was the moment where, hopefully Caleb Williams becomes and grows to be something special. Like I think this season we're going to start to see a lot of, we're going to see a lot out of Caleb Williams early. And I think that, once we start to see it, once he starts to get better and develop, then the sky's the limit for this team. So let's get on to Twitter. And let's look at, there's only one thing that I want to talk about real quick, and then we'll get out of here. But it is the Chicago Bears 2024 upgrades. This is, just take a look at this list, and let me zoom it in just a bit for you here so that you can see. Now, these are the Chicago Bears 2024 upgrades from Justin Fields to Caleb Williams. Now, is that an upgrade? I think, look, I still like Justin Fields. I still think Justin Fields probably a talented guy. And, a lot of people are saying, well, runner that just happens to be a quarterback. That's not true. In college, he was fantastic. So he's an athlete that is a quarterback. Caleb Williams is a quarterback who happens to be an athlete. That's the difference between these two guys. Now, how does it translate on the field? I think that Caleb Williams makes a lot better throws. I think that he's a lot cleaner in the way that he throws the ball. He goes from all angles. He doesn't seem to be in his own head too much. Justin Fields always felt like he was trying to overthink what he was doing. So is this an upgrade from the position? I'm not sure physically if it's an upgrade. Mentally, however, it does seem to be an enormous upgrade. So I think that this was a good move overall. I reject it, by the way, as such, but because I am still a Justin Fields fan. But I mean, I do think that clearly this is an upgrade for the passing portion of this team. Then you have Deonta Foreman and DeAndre Swift. And look, I loved what I saw from Deonta Foreman. That guy could bowl people over. He played hard. He ran hard. DeAndre Swift, though, I think is a different type of character. DeAndre Swift represents a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield better than Deonta Foreman. He can make all the plays, and he's a great and fantastic blocker. Deonta Foreman, Khalil Herbert, both of them pretty weak at picking up pass rushes. Roshan Johnson, actually really good at it, but he was third string. So, but DeAndre Swift, big time upgrade in that position, in my opinion. But again, I say that knowing full well that I really liked what I saw from Deonta Foreman. Also, Darnell Mooney, Keenan Allen, I don't even think that's in the conversation right now. Darnell Mooney underperformed dramatically for 2 years in a row, after having a breakout rookie season. I think there was no way, or rookie and sophomore season, but I don't think there's any way really that this is not a significant upgrade. Then we have Equinemius St. Brown for Roma Dunze. Is that a significant upgrade too? I would like to think that is an enormous level of upgrade. So, 3 of these 4 so far are just significant upgrades. One of them still an upgrade, but better. Robert Tonyan and Gerald Everett. So Robert Tonyan, look, I think Robert Tonyan was part of a system, and he looked great in that system for a short period of time. That was enough to get him a new contract somewhere. Luke Getsy, of course, being that guy, wanted to bring him in. It did not work out. Gerald Everett, obviously an upgrade at that position, at least in my opinion. Ryan Bates over Lucas Patrick. That is an upgrade, I would think, in that position as well. I like the, by the way, I'm going to say this to anybody who hears it. I really liked the fight that I saw in Dan Feeney last year. He was not a great center, but he had a lot of heart and he had a lot of passion. And I think that he was okay. I don't think that he was the future at the center position. He was just he was a guard learning it on the fly out of necessity. And probably could have gotten better. But Lucas Patrick, he had a long time and he wasn't that good. So this is a significant upgrade. Eddie Jackson for Kevin Byard. Now, of course, obviously anybody who's a Chicago Bear, we're always going to love Eddie Jackson. But it was clear that once he got that big contract, his level of, I want to say effort, I don't want to make it about money, but you saw the product on the field. Immediately after getting that money, the stats took a big hit. Now, could that be because the team was just in serious decline? Yes, of course it could be that the team was in serious decline, but this team started to get it together last year. Eddie Jackson did not appear to be getting it together last year, giving up a lot of big plays. Okay. And when you see that, then you know that that is a guy, a little bit on the declines and not worth what he's being paid. And that's okay. We still love Eddie Jackson. We're always going to love Eddie Jackson. Bojack is the man. He's always going to be the man. He's always going to be in our hearts in Chicago. But Kevin Byard I think he's a two-time Pro Bowler. Like, this is a guy who I think makes the big plays and upgrades this team, at least fundamentally on this level. This is going to be a better safety squad. And then you have Trenton Gill out, Torrey Taylor in, and Jesus Christ, I mean, Torrey Taylor is Legatron. He's kicking the ball a mile and huge hang time. This is a significant and enormous upgrade. So, I think the Bears overall are a significantly improved team. It's a matter of that product on the field. What does that product on the field look like? How do people like Kiran and Magaji start to figure into the rotation early on? Is there going to be a move for Nate Davis? And do we have another guard other than Coleman Shelton? Karan and Magaji, does he take over tackle? Does Braxton Jones move inside? There's a lot of different pieces to this equation that we're going to be learning as this season progresses. How is Austin Booker going to handle what he's doing? How is he going to handle the punting game? How is he going to handle being the relief, I think, for Montez Sweat? I'm pretty sure he's playing left side right now. That's where he's penciled in as the second string. So, and I believe that Byron Dawkins might be, or it might be Byron Edwards. Oh shit! Now, if you know what, now my brain just escaped me. He just had a birthday, but I think he's the backup for DeMarcus Walker. So, and then, by the way, let's not forget this one last significant upgrade here. And that was the upgrade from Luke Getsy to Shane Waldron, which I guess, we should probably at least remark on this. It's that's a big one. That is a very big one. So thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I appreciate your time. Montez Sweat, stay healthy, my man. We are going to absolutely need you. Caleb Williams, sign your goddamn contract, man, because we need, like we need you on the field. We need all that behind us. This is the year. This is the year when we start to feel like the Chicago Bears team has turned it around, and they are now here for the fans, and it's going to be an absolutely banger of a season. I'm still sticking with 13-4. I keep thinking like, man, 12-5 is probably better. It's probably more realistic, but I'm not backing down. 13-4, I think that we're going to be in for an absolute shocker of a season. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember to bear down and fuck Green Bay.